Innovation Unplugged from the Alabama Community College System's Innovation Center takes you inside Alabama's workforce development. Join us for enlightening conversations with community leaders and industry experts showcasing experiences, addressing key issues, and celebrating successes in the workforce initiatives across the state. Welcome back to Innovation Unplugged, a production of the ACCS Innovation Center. We are having a good time today. I've got in the studio Brandi, Merrill, Director of Curriculum Design. And on Zoom today, we've got the Dean of Workforce at Bishop State Community College, Akareem Spears. How are you?
Hey, good to see you.
You too, man. Thanks for joining us. So you were supposed to be on earlier today, and you had to bail on us for the United States Navy. And I'll take that as a compliment.
If we had to take a backseat to anybody, if it was one of the armed forces, I guess we'll just have to take that.
And I'll really want to dig into that later because I think that whole project is really cool. And you guys are about to set the whole, set the standard for the nation. But what we always like to do is, with our guests is hear their background and where they came from and how they got to wherever they are in their current role at the college. So who is Akareem Spears and how did he get right here?
You said that's so funny, but I'm actually I guess my formal title is the Dean of Workforce Economic Development here at Bishop State.
Okay.
I've been at the college 21 years, be 22 next May. Spent most of my first 18 years in adult education. I had done, prior to coming to Bishop in 2003, I had done adult education. I was an adult education instructor for Faulkner State Community College, which is now Coastal Alabama Community College. And believe it or not, I never worked in a school setting. I worked at a plant. I was what they call a work-based adult education instructor. So I worked as a adult education instructor in an aluminum plant that made parts for Ford.
Okay.
In Bangladesh, Alabama, Citation Southern Aluminum. So I did that for about a year and 6 months. I moved back home from Cleveland, Ohio, where I was a therapist for adolescents, similar to Alta Point here in Mobile, but it was the last stage before incarceration, and got to really try to help kids through therapy and coping skills and anger management and those types of things. So that was really a passion. My wife at the time, or we weren't married at the time, but fiance, she wanted to move back home. We're both from Mobile. We moved back home.
Good man.
And she's the brains of the family. She's a mechanical engineer, so she's the brains of the family. So I had to follow her. I got a simple, education degree, so I had to follow her. So we moved back home, and she actually worked for the company at another location at their machine shop in Bangladesh. And she was in orientation, and the guy asked her, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm becoming the adult ed director at Coastal Alabama," who eventually became my boss. And she said, "Hey, my fiance is looking for a job," and interviewed. The rest is history. So kind of worked in adult ed. I worked at the plant for a little while. I came back, worked at a nonprofit, and then in 2003 interviewed for the adult ed director's job here at Bishop, and absolutely loved it. Like I said, spent 18 years of my career just seeing the students walk across the stage and be able to see where they came from, get a credential under their belt, get a GED. And our graduations were always tear jerkers and really excited parents. So really good experience for those 18 years in adult ed.
Gosh, that's such an awesome story. I didn't know your background, Akareem. It's so neat to learn, about people and where they
Yeah, I'm
came
just a
from.
regular guy.
It's cool though. It is cool. I just didn't know your background. That's awesome.
Yeah, you can't tell now, but I also in my while I was in college, I did outside of college too, I did 8 years in the Army Reserves. Can't tell that now. That's probably 80 pounds ago.
Oh,
But so
stop.
I do. So I'm pretty good at following directives and and that's why I said my personality is it's kind of been a combination of years because, I always try to take myself out of it and see what's going to be best for the college and best for the student. And it sounds kind of cheesy sometimes when people say that, but I would hope that people who dealt with me on a individual basis know that, okay, he's really going to try to help. He's really going to try to work to make it go, because sometimes we get in the way of ourselves, and I don't want to get in the way of anybody's progress. So that's kind of my motto, and my staff hate it here because our motto in workforce is we don't see problems, we see solutions, and they just like, oh, here he goes again.
We like that mindset. We kind of approach a lot of our stuff that way, and it's enjoyable. Actually, we are all
Yeah.
problem solvers at heart, I think, and I think that's why we tend to have fun doing what we're doing, because it's just solving challenges, right? And so y'all are essentially doing the same thing. If you're adopting that motto, then you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Overcoming those challenges for sure.
Yeah, somebody asked me that. I've known him for a long time. Like, what do you do now? I'm like, I work for the college system. What do you do? And I just kind of froze, and I looked at him. I'm like, how do I even answer that question? And I kind of chuckled, and they were just looking at me like I'd lost my mind. I was like, I solve problems.
Yeah.
I come up with stuff. I just make up stuff. And they're like, I don't know what that means. And so me neither. So moving on.
Well, and probably, our day is probably like yours, Akareem. And a lot of folks, especially workforce, is your every day doesn't look the same, right? Like
No.
you just got through saying, hey, I had to, rearrange when I chatted with y'all on the podcast because, well, the Navy called. And so I have to be there for the Navy. It's just, we get stuff like that too. Well, the Navy hasn't called us yet, but anyway, moving on. I'm glad they called you. They reached out to you and got you. But having said that, it's so different every day. And like Houston was saying, when people ask like, well, what do you do? We can give them the spiel of what we do. But if you asked tomorrow, well, Akareem, what did you do today? It is not a cookie cutter of what you did today and tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, to me, I love that. I love that, the varied nature of just kind of this aspect of education and what we do and all that good stuff.
Same way when you were, I guess, working in that aluminum facility, you had a process, but something was always going wrong, right? With machines or people or whatever, all that stuff. How did you take that experience and leverage that into what you do now? That critical thinking, problem solving, quick on your feet.
Yeah.
Well, so I was, I was outside to the company. I was really kind of in a support role. We did help with orientation, did some tape for them, and then really looked at. We did what I would do is my approach was we held these courses. They were sort of like required by the company that each shift had to go through. They call it a skills course, and it was about 6 weeks. And what I would do is when I created the course, and when I first started, it was just like, we're doing all this math, they're falling asleep because they just got off work. This is not working. So what I did is I kind of revamped it just kind of to help myself. As I did an icebreaker. Each day I did a math skill, did an English skill, and I did a life skill. And that kind of really resonated with the folks because it wasn't just all coming in, learning math, and it was that icebreaker kind of woke everybody up. If they're getting off, then they were tired. So I had to wake them up. And if they were coming in, they didn't want to come in an hour early to listen to me. So the icebreaker did some, maybe, 4 or 5 math problems, 4 or 5, English problems. And then they really got into the soft skills because I talked about communications and making decisions because they, in that area, Bay Minette, that was really, back then, this was late 90s. They were making $13, $14 an hour, which was really good. And they thought that was just the end all be all.
Yep.
They didn't have to go get any other education. They were going to be fine for the rest of their life. And, eventually, the plant ended up closing. And that's what I was trying to get them at. You got to continue to grow, continue to expand. And some of them did, some of them really did well. But it was one of your better jobs in that area. So it was a mindset. If I get a job here, I've made it. And, we wanted them to say, you not made it, you took a step, but then you can continue to grow and get better. So that's really one of the things. And I also learned more about corporate culture than I had done in previously, because previously I was in a kind of social service environment, but corporate culture was a lot of tracking and measurements and matrices and things that I went with the feeling and touchy-feely, kind of really soft side of my life. But then when you get in business and industry, they look at the hard data and making decisions based off data, and so I think because of my background, I'm able to kind of meet the two and say I have some kind of compassion, but also can look at data and kind of make those decisions based on data. And that's what I really got from it, was to use data, and also, with my background being counseling, having that background to say, let's look at the data, but also have some compassion. The data may say everyone is failing this course, but I think the compassion part says, how do you get them not to fail this course, or what can we do to change it? That's always my approach. Is the data is really good if you want to share it, but also looking at what our students, and you guys do it all the time. Our population has challenges that the traditional 4-year college may not experience. They may have children, they may have to take care of grandmother or mother or whatever the case may be, and they're just trying to do the best that they can. And so we what I say here is we mentor through that process. Yeah, you might not get it right the first time, but as much as we can mentor you and get that out, we try to do that. And we have a president that doesn't hold us back. He wants us to push the envelope and be creative and come up with ways to support students. And over the past 2 years, that's why our enrollment at the college has increased so much, because he's really pushing that support for students. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know what I heard you say with your time at the aluminum manufacturing is that you basically were customizing that training based on your learners, right?
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that really kind of sets the stage for what you do now, right?
Yeah.
And was kind of like a precursor to your day-to-day job now. Just listening to you talk about how, well, based on what their needs were, we may do this that day, or, with this student. So I thought that was cool. It kind of rang true to what you do now,
How much?
And back then I was like I say, probably 28, 29. And it was scary because some of the folks I was dealing with were, maybe 45 and 50, which I thought at the time was old, but now
it's
that's
not
a young.
so old.
Now it's squarely in
So
it.
yeah, but they were, and so I could read the room, I could look at the body language, but I was doing it the old way. I was like, they're not interested in me at all. But once I started changing it up and started getting them engaged, people would tell me, I love this class, I learned a lot. But the first group, we struggled because we were trying to figure it out, and I was just going by the book because I was new. And then I said, this is not working. And so I just kind of made some changes.
Do you have to do that a lot now with training for business and industry?
Yeah, and one of the things we found out, that I found out, especially working more closely with business and industry, is oftentimes business and industry will have a pain point that they know they won't resolve. But when you start asking about, well, what really does this mean? They haven't really investigated themselves. They know that this is causing me a problem. So when you sit down and you talk to them and really start analyzing what they need, they may need that initial thing that's presenting, but they may also need some other things that are causing you to have the presenting problem. So it's more of when we sit down here at Bishop, and you probably know a lot of these folks, but we always sit down as a team with the CTE dean, which is on the credit side of the house, with Brad James, who's over ATN, and then also myself on the non-credit side of the house, because there may be things that I can do in the non-credit side. There may be things Brad can do on the incumbent worker and the higher level training side. And then there may be things that the company may say, hey, I want a credit-based short certificate. So that team approach usually helps us a lot.
Yep.
Because we fill in the gaps without having 3 meetings. We can have one meeting at the at the same time and resolve those companies' issues. Because companies, one thing they value is their time. So
absolutely looking
sure.
for peak efficiency.
Yeah, that's something you mentioned ATN, and we've talked to Keith Phillips, who's I guess he's still executive director of ATN for a while.
Yes.
When we first started Skills for Success and we got going and we talked about the hydraulics and PLCs and some of those pneumatics, those standard courses ATN delivers that are 5 days long. It's like, hey, can we pilot those in a way like to make it a Skills for Success model to save the company time so that you could do the online piece and then come in and do 2 days of hydraulics versus 5 days. And we never got there. And nobody said no. It's just we never got to that heavy lift. But I still wonder if we could take that content, that classroom content out, and do you think the industries would buy into something like that?
Yeah, and definitely that time factor, because they don't want to keep them away from the line or keep them away from production. And I think what the unique thing about industry is a lot of those incumbent workers are already at a certain skill level. You don't have to really do the foundational things that you have to do with some of our, workforce students and adult ed students. They don't have those foundational principles of the industry that we have to go through. So you could start them in maybe, module 4, where, the traditional Skills for Success student would start in module 1 because they already got the basic safety. They got the like more of a review versus a full, comprehensive delivery of the course.
Right.
That'd be an interesting idea of how we, if we ever got to that, how we would actually allow them to collect or use prior learning or years experience, whatever.
Test out.
Just test out, yeah. To that point, let me ask you this question, Akareem. You guys have run a lot of Skills for Success, heavy equipment, and different fiber optics. I think those are two of y'all's biggest. A good bit of food and beverage too. What would you say if we had a heavy equipment for incumbent workers for your municipalities, construction companies that were, instead of 2 days on skid steer, it was 1 day, and that 1 day was really about safety, pre-trip, maintenance, and like very basic operation. So it would be half the time, half the reimbursement. Would that be a good selling point for you?
Yeah, I think that would work because we have a relationship with our, she's over facilities. She's on our board with the city of Mobile. So I think that's a good opportunity to speak with her and kind of getting feedback from her on how we could do that, because we did some training for them through that AWSP grant.
Yeah.
Through Commerce, and we did it with the city of Mobile. We did their public works department, and we trained them on OSHA 10, OSHA 30, and giving them some basic safety for. They felt like, and it got them a raise too. So it was allowed, if they completed it, they were able to get a raise.
Oh,
so
nice.
Yeah,
they're very good program, and it was really implemented through adult ed, but they did a really good job with that. But it was probably I think 100 plus folks that work with the public works.
Wow.
I would like to explore that sometime. There's some funding mechanisms. I guess we'd have to talk to fiscal and probably our boss who's in the next room, making sure she was actually okay with that. But I just think that would be a really good selling point for you guys around the state to say, okay, municipalities, you've got all these people who have been running these things for a long time, but you don't have any papers on it, and they don't really need 2 days, or they can run through that checklist in 30 minutes, but they need documented trainings. Everybody's on a baseline.
Yeah.
That would allow you guys to get those folks in, out, and now you're really serving what your industries need from our product, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
And similar to different, but similar to what we're doing with Department of Transportation. Just different, modified.
Yeah.
Along the same lines.
Yep.
Modifying what's already there to suit a certain need, right?
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah. And to that point, let's transition a little bit. Similar topic, Akareem. What has it been like for you with Skills for Success? And we started way back with CDL. Like I remember I was sitting at my farm on a tractor, putting out hay, freezing my toes off, trying to figure out how we were going to get Skills for Success CDL started at Bishop with Bishop's 8-week program. This has been the historic flagship. So from way back then, man, how's it been for you guys to run these courses in your community, serving your region?
Well, I think for us it's been really good, and just for so I would just say this for the listeners and the viewers, I guess. Workforce development, it sounds like really cool and sexy, and it's the thing to do. And you think we got this staff of 500, but no, it's only a staff of like 3. So what we have done with our skills for success, in most of our programs, we have embedded it within existing programs, which made it a lot more easy to implement. So with CDL was already working well. Brad, our truck driving instructor, did well with being able to take those theory courses, get through those, and then adding that range and road and all those things at the end, because he was already doing it. But this was just a mechanism for him to do it ahead of time, kind of get some of that stuff done, verify that they had the MVRs and all the things were clear, and then they were ready to get moving. So for CDL, which is one of our larger programs here at Bishop State, it's worked well and continues to work well. And once and you know this, Houston, we had to sit down and stop a couple of times and make sure the process flow went well for the students, and we got all of those things worked out. And now it's just continuing to build on that. And again, we don't always think about it in terms of, but it's really lucrative in terms of the scholarship that we get back from the students. Takes a little longer for some students, and that's okay. But the benefit is that, it's not tying up Brad for all those theory courses that he would have been tied up for the theory courses.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like the way you say that because that's exactly what the school systems bought in. That's why they bought in because for school bus drivers, that's actually like 3 different things, not just Class A or Class B. And so they did not know how they were going to have the time to do all the theory and the behind the wheel and whatever. So I think most of the colleges, out of the 23 that are doing workforce, 23 of them do CDL. Like everybody has done CDL at least once or twice, some a lot more than others, but they've all seen that it saved them a ton of time and they've modified their own thing. Tell us a little bit more about that, because you guys work closely for your Class B instruction. You work closely with adult ed, and y'all have presented on this multiple times. It's a beautiful process, and I think if other colleges could hear it, or other students, whoever listens out there, for those who need that extra assistance, man, y'all do a really good job. Run that story down for us, how that works.
So what we do is, before Skills for Success became popular, we were doing a Class B permit class. So as a part of that, they would get we would get the motor vehicle report out of the way, we would get the permit out of the way, pre-trip, everything. We'd go over that, and then we'd send them over to our CDL program as ready to get Class B certified, and Brad would work with us. And then if they wanted to come back and get A, they could. So we really didn't change a lot. What we did is we now put them in Skills for Success, went through that same model, go through the theory. And then once they finish with the permitting part, we send them over to Brad. They get their do the Class B range and road, and then we kind of send them on their way, and they're ready to go. And our first, I think our first completer for CDL was a Class B through that adult ed process.
Mm-hmm.
And he did extremely well. He's still working.
Yeah. So one of those guys, and his name is Quintez Finch. He's actually a picture of him in front of the concrete mixer truck where he works.
Yeah.
he's in our marketing studio at the center in Decatur. I see it every day when I walk by there. That joker, he texted me last summer, Father's Day, and it was, it was Sunday, and he was like, "Hey, I appreciate you. Happy Father's Day." And I was like, "Hey man, it's great." And I guess he realized I was kind of wondering why he was texting me on Father's Day, but he said, "I just want you to know I'm at home with my kids on Father's Day." And he said, "Because I have this job.
Yeah.
I'm not working wherever I was working." So, you guys really rocked his world, and he's actually got his second job now.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, and what we liked about him was he's our student. That's what our student looks like. He's probably trying to upskill, trying to get him in a better position. And how can I as quick as possible? And he was able to do it. He loved it. He had a super great attitude.
Yeah.
And just trying to do better. And that was just, a benefit for us. He got he loved the publicity, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think for him, it tells the story to the community about like what we do here. It's not, we're not getting in some cases we do, but we're not getting typically that valedictorian who has offers at Alabama and Yale and Princeton, or getting the kid that may have been C-minus student, great kid, just had some things going on, trying to make a way. And, we were able to assist. So that's kind of what we do.
Yep. I've seen some of the information coming through talking to Matt Heaton, our career readiness manager, and just the different relationships and programs at the different high schools you guys work with. And I've heard those same stories. And Matt was also a teacher. He was a special ed teacher, and that's where we met 10 years ago. But he raves about those connections that y'all have in that community, and for those kids who are, I say disadvantaged because I'm drawing a blank right now, but they had some obstacles that other kids don't in that community.
Hey, you know what I want to talk about real quick, which was something when y'all presented and you were kind of walking and stepping out, what that collaboration looked like between your workforce and your adult ed departments. I loved, and I think this was maybe like one of last year's conferences, listening to both of your teams, your adult ed team and your workforce team, talk about how, well, it wasn't this smooth always. And so they really kind of backed it up and hit the rewind button and said, well, I didn't really know what they were doing over there, and I didn't really like what they were doing over there, or I didn't think I did. And really like listening to that real life, just almost like a reenactment of how they had started and where they are now in terms of like teamwork. And I don't even know that, like, listening to them in the beginning, if they would have even realized if it was intentional that way, or if it, was just this organic collaboration between the two. But like listening to them go back and tell that story of, y'all were who you were and we were who we were, and we were doing things differently. But then, boy, the second we came together and we figured out this process, it's been this smooth ever since. So I know this is kind of difficult. So I say all that to say, watching that from your leadership perspective, how did you encourage or guide that process for them to become problem solvers themselves? Because they did. Yeah.
I'll put it this way. I have no shrinking violets on my staff. So,
No, you don't.
no shrinking violets on my staff, and they all are really passionate about what they do. But I think, at the end of it all, they're trying to do what's best and easiest for students. And we all kind of resonate with that. And I think, so we all realize that, okay, what's going to be easier for the student? It would be easier for you to go ahead and do it here, send it over to Brad already prepped. And the beauty of it all, probably the most important and significant thing is the adult ed instructor who taught the permitting class was also a adjunct instructor for CDL.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a seamless transition. So he was the key piece. His name is James Williams. He is like the rock star when it comes to transitioning those students from the permit to their Class B in Skills for Success, because he doesn't lose that continuity. There's a connection from I left adult ed and I'm going straight over here to CDL, and I see the same instructor. So he was a key piece to that. And Brad allowing him to assign him to those students, because at that point they're no longer adult ed students. But because they see the same instructor, they were familiar with him, they go directly to him. And it was a seamless transition because they were familiar with him, they didn't have to learn him, they knew what to expect, and then he was able to be patient with them because he knew they had come from adult ed with the permitting process. So yeah, he was probably the key piece to the puzzle, but I think from a administrative clerical standpoint, it was just all of us being passionate about making sure it was easier for the students to get through the process, because we didn't want to send them all the way through all these hoops. So
yeah, you met James that day we were at Bishop on the Carver campus.
Yeah.
What I love about him is every time I see him, he's like, "Hey, I saw this class y'all have out. Can I take that class?" Every time, like the dude is always trying to level up, and I'm like, "Of course, man. Like, yeah, like just sign up, just take it." And I saw him at the ACCA, and he cornered me about the forklift. He's like, "Hey, when can I take that?" I was like, "Bro, it's not even ready."
You cornered me too.
it's like as soon he's like, "Man, I want to teach that." I said, "I want to pair it with CDL. I want to get these guys dual certified and all that, so they can literally do whatever they want to do." And then we ran like a pipe dream there for about 10 minutes of all the things we could bundle together. And so every time I see him, he's got a new idea on how to do something.
And the thing about this. The interesting thing about Mr. Williams is, so we were having, like I said, I was in adult ed for years. So when we hired Mr. Williams, he primarily taught math for us. A really smart guy, taught math, was a really good math instructor. And one day we were talking, and he was saying, "Hey, I used to drive trucks. And so a couple years later, I said, "Hey, we're going to do class." They start doing career pathways. And so I said, "Let's do Class B CDL." And this was before Skills for Success. So we started doing Class B CDL, and we would get the permit and then take them on to get their Class B. He ran that entire program. And then when Skills for Success came about, it was like a natural fit. He started working part-time with the truck driving school. And then once, Skills for Success became a part of that, it was a no-brainer for us to say, "Hey, Mr. Williams, you take them to get their permit through adult ed, move them over to Skills for Success when they get to CDL, and then we are, we're good to go." And like I said, I can't take a lot of credit for that. Miss Hobbs and her team, and Darlisha Davis, who's now at the Innovation Center, they kind of made that really a sweet process. So
yeah, it's one of the most smooth I've seen around. I came from a different college, and adult ed and workforce were separate. At some point, they were together with CTE or under CTE, and then they were separate. And so there was always this, how do you do it? And at that college, there wasn't much collaboration on anything really for CDL with that. So seeing y'all run that out, man, that's been so good. I wish that all the colleges were built the same. Like all the different divisions were kind of organized the same. And we've talked about that at WOA, the colleges did. But it would make it so much easier if they were all structured the same, so we could all do it the same way. But for whatever reason, that beautiful difference exists.
Spice of life.
Yeah,
that's
spice
what that
of life.
is.
In general, Skills for Success. Oh man, we have so much variety. Crazy.
Makes it fun.
And that's my next segue. We got so many courses. We've got 40 courses in the catalog that you guys can run. How do you decide what to run and when? What's your process for that?
So, and I'll tell you, first of all, we try to accommodate as many folks as we can. I think one of the big things is we have a partnership with our school system, and that's been a big. We've done fiber optics in the school system with one of our career tech high schools, Faulkner Career Tech High School, and that's probably been our most enrollment because they're somewhat of a captive audience, and we've got a good relationship with two of the instructors there, and they push it and promote it with their students. And then we've done the labs And it gets more bang for the buck. And we go take a picture, and they put them on Bishop's website,
Oh
or
yeah.
they put them on the school's website. So those are really positive things. And it was a skill. I'll just share our IT director here at the college. He went through the fiber optics course, and he said, "Hey, I want to get through this course." So send him the link. He did it. He went through the lab, and he said, "This is where we need to be." He said, "In IT, he said you can't get this kind of training, everywhere." He said, "For it to be free." He's like, that was a really good. So our IT director here at the college has gone through fiber optics, same course that high school students go through,
Mm-hmm.
but it shows you that the skills that the high school students are learning can be used in a professional environment, because he uses them every day.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to splice, learning how to do those things. And by the way, he's the instructor that we use is a little bit more expensive than some of the instructors, but I think because of the continuity, we know how he works, we pay it,
Yeah.
and for consistency purposes, we really like him. I'm kind of old school in that vein, is I want to make sure that I know what I'm getting, I'm comfortable with it, and I'll pay for it if it's going to be a quality product. And I think he does give us a quality product, because when our IT director told us, he said, "This is good information. This is good." So that's another professional kind of critiquing another professional. So
Yeah.
we were that was my stamp of approval that, yeah, we're doing the right thing, by even though we're paying a little more, we're doing the right thing.
I
So
love that. You know what I would, in a perfect world, if I had a wish and it would be granted, it would be to kind of like going back and listening to your story, like where you've been, how all the jobs that you did kind of led to the role you're in now. And, it's all of our stories. It would be to somehow, and this is like grant the wish. The wish would be to see all of these high school students, and what they will do in the future, how these credentials and how these courses impact a career later on down the road, because you don't know. You have no idea how this, specific moment or this specific course or this specific job will affect a future. You may think it is something that you're just randomly doing right now, but later come to find out, oh, it was a crucial piece of why I got this job, or, how it led me to do these things. It would be just incredible, and as big as y'all's footprint is down there, and the incredible relationships y'all have with the high schools, it would be so much fun to just watch and kind of know in the future how those courses and y'all's impact plays such a role in their future careers. That'd be a wish, wish to know.
And I will say this too, and you probably know this too, Brandi, that one of the biggest things, like I said, we don't have a large staff here, but what we do have is we have programs. So like in our line worker program, instead of us going and saying we're going to create, 10 new fiber optics courses, but we have this ready pool of applicants for line workers, and Alabama Power wanted, as a part of their process for line worker, we embedded fiber optics in there. Now we can use some workforce staff that are already working with Alabama Power to continue that process of just, getting the registering for the course, getting them set up, and then kind of managing that. So um, just because we're limited in staff, I'm in some ways, and I've said this to Houston several times. I said, if I had another person, I said I would probably do more. And what I'm trying to get to is, he told me, he said, the way you do it is you do enough, you make enough money off of it that you can justify getting that person. So once I get to that point, then I'm going to hit my president up again to see if we can do that. But I think with the staff that we have, we still do a good job of making sure that we put those courses out there. So
Y'all basically just gave away trade secrets, right? So you're telling him how to succeed, and you're saying, hey, I'm now going to take what he said, and this is how I'm going to go work my president. So pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I love the collaboration there.
Chad Sutton was on earlier, Akareem, and he when he started, he had him and Christy Hawkins, and she was like halftime. Well, she part-time with him. So he was put department of 1.5, and then he got her full-time, and then he added Jenny Saunders. So now he's got 3, and he's like, how do I get a 4th? I was like, keep running the courses, man, and keep working with business industry.
Yeah.
And the presidents buy into that, though. And I think Lawson's about to do the same thing. Jeff State's hired 2 or 3 like that. So it works. And, everybody that's ever done it has just seen more exponential growth. So that'd be really cool. So we're almost out of time. And I wanted to get to this earlier, man. The United States Navy.
Yeah.
Tell us what's going on there.
And what do we do? How do we help you how can we help support you?
So what's happening is the Navy is expanding into the Mobile area in the region, really. And they'll give you the full spiel, but I'll give you the shortened version since we're on time. But the shortened version is China is building submarines quicker than the United States. So the goal for the United States is to build more submarines. And they're going to do that. Virginia-class submarines and Columbia-class submarines, they're going to build those or modules for those submarines here locally at Austal. There's some different skill sets that are required for submarines. However, foundationally, it's based off of welding, ship fitting, pipe fitting. There's some non-destructive testing, metrology, or quality control, metrics, those kinds of things, precision measurement. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is expand our programs here with the equipment that they need, and then ultimately expand our facilities here, because when you look at the projection about what's supposed to happen with submarine and shipbuilding over the next few years, it's about 6,000 new jobs.
Wow.
So that's a lot. And to accommodate that, Bishop has a new Center for Advanced Manufacturing, but based on those projections, we're going to need more. So we've already been working with the Navy at looking at some potential expansions of our welding program, adding welding robots, also looking at 3D metal printing. We had a 3D printers here, but not metal. So adding those to some CNC machines. Like you say, non-destructive testing or X-rays. We haven't done a lot of that. So we're getting into that, and really just kind of open to what the Navy's needs. We visited Danville, Virginia, to see the gold standard at what they call ATDM, or Advanced Training for Defense Manufacturing. So visiting that, kind of getting an idea of what's new in the field and innovative. So a lot of work over the past 6 months has gone into trying to get Bishop prepared to meet this demand, because it's going to be a really busy and lucrative opportunity for this community and the region over the next 4 to 5 years. So.
That's incredible. And, we're a tool in your tool belt. So if ever you see a spot,
Barry's already talked about
where we can come in and support the entry into the programs that you guys are building, or the pathways that you guys are building, we are here and ready and willing to support you in that venture. That's awesome.
And I'll tell you where we are. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I'll tell you where we are in terms of what we're waiting on. Last week, the meeting that Lindsay called, she met with all the local shipbuilders here, and the goal is to try to get a common set of curriculum and skill sets and competencies that not only will work for Ingalls but Austal and Bollinger and all of the shipyards, and not just for one particular audience. And I think that would be ideal to put that in a canned fundamentals or pre-apprenticeship fashion for Skills for Success, because and then because a lab could potentially be 4 weeks. But if you did it as a pre-apprenticeship or a precursor to get in, you eliminate some of that upfront work.
Absolutely.
So. Love it. That's we'd love to build submarines with y'all, to be tiny part of that process. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, oh man, submarines in Alabama, that's really cool.
I know. You talked about sexy stuff earlier. That's pretty sexy, honestly.
Yeah,
and that is a huge venture for the state of Alabama, and a huge nod, honestly. Yeah. What an honor. Yeah. Well, thank you, Akareem. We appreciate you being with us today, and I know the listeners got a lot out of this discussion and how awesome Bishop is and what all y'all are doing to improve your processes and serve your community and your students, and, really just always figuring out what's next and how do you get better and do better and all that kind of good stuff. So we thank you for being on today, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank y'all so much for changing the time for me. And I was not going to let Houston go this day without me doing this podcast.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate your time, Akareem. You're doing big things, and it's always, every time I talk to you, I'm buoyed by your enthusiasm and your questions for how can we do X, Y, Z. It's every single time trying to get better.
Love it.
Love it.
Love it. Well, to all of our listeners, thank you for listening to another broadcast of Innovation Unplugged, and be sure and like, subscribe, and follow on all podcast platforms.